Good morning. Today is Monday morning, September 21st, 2020. Today is Tzom Gedalia, the fast day of Gedalia. Gedalia was a Jewish official installed by the Babylonians, by Bavel, after the destruction of the first temple. Now, immediately after the destruction of the first temple, which is Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, many Jews were exiled by the Babylonians, but not all of them. There was still a population of Jews living in Israel. And initially, right after they destroyed the temple and conquered the country, the Babylonians installed their own caretaker government under their control, Babylonian control, for those Jews still living in Israel, and they appointed a Jewish man named Gedalia. He was in office for only about 2 months until he was assassinated. Now, there's actually a dispute about which day it was. Of course, today in the Jewish calendar is the 3rd day of Tishrei, and that's the day that we observe as Tzom Gedalia, the fast day of Gedalia. But there's a dispute as to whether the actual assassination occurred on this date, the 3rd of Tishrei, or whether it actually occurred on the 2nd of Tishrei, and it is delayed because that's the 2nd day of Rosh Hashanah, so we don't want to have a fast day on Rosh Hashanah, so we delay it to the next day. That's a dispute that does not really have a resolution. This fast day fits within 2 separate categories. First, it is one of the fast days relating to the destruction of the temple. So, of course, we have Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, but we have Asara B'Teves, the 10th of Teves in the winter. We have Shivasa B'Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz. Each one of these commemorates a different stage in the destruction of the temple. And Tzom Gedalia, the fast of Gedalia, is the stage that goes as follows. After the actual destruction of the temple, there was still a significant connection between the Jewish people and the land of Israel. There was no independent government. Many of the Jews had been exiled, but there was still a Jewish community living in Israel, and there was a Jewish person, at least nominally, in charge in Israel. With the assassination of Gedalia, that was cut. So that link was cut. So Tzom Gedalia commemorates a more drastic split or rift between the Jewish people and the land of Israel in the aftermath of the destruction of the temple, deserving of its own commemoration on this date. And it represents the further step of the consequence of the destruction of the temple beyond the actual destruction of the building and beyond the loss of political autonomy, the actual separating between the Jewish people and the land of Israel that was more completely fulfilled with the destruction, with the assassination of Gedalia. This fast day also has a place within the cycle of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It occurs during the Aseres Yemei Teshuvah, the days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Well, it could be that after 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, it's a good idea to have a fast day. Most people ate a little bit too much. But much more seriously, relating to the themes of repentance, of introspection, of making changes within our lives, both as individuals and as a society, we are reminded of this terrible sin that occurred on that date when Gedalia was assassinated. Remember, Gedalia was assassinated by fellow Jews. It was an assassination by other Jews. In 1995, when Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated by a Jewish person, there were many who said that that was the first time such a despicable event had occurred since the assassination of Gedalia. It's a terrible convergence of events. But the terribleness of this event acts for us as a spur to teshuvah, to repentance. It warns us of the dangers of sinas chinam, of needless hatred. It warns us of the dangers of enmity between Jews, which are always our worst enemy and cause more harm than external forces cause. There's one more very important and very interesting lesson that our rabbis derive from this terrible episode of the assassination of Gedalia. And that is as follows. Gedalia was warned that his life was in danger. He was warned that there was a plot against him to assassinate him. But Gedalia responded by saying, that's Lashon Hara. You're speaking negatively about other Jews, and that's a false assumption. And therefore, he did not pay any attention to it. And those people were therefore close to him, and they had the opportunity to be able to assassinate him because he was not on guard. And our rabbis point out as follows. It is correct, we are not allowed to speak Lashon Hara, to say something negative about another person that is even true. We're not allowed to say. To accept Lashon Hara, that is, to accept something negative as true, is also prohibited. The prohibition is not only against the speaker, it's also against the listener. However, our rabbis make a very important distinction. It's one thing to say we are not supposed to accept as true something negative we have heard, but we are allowed and in fact should take precautions that perhaps it is true. If someone tells us that a person is planning something negative, maybe we are not supposed to believe it as a fact, but we certainly should take precautions to protect against it happening. And Gedalia did not do that. It doesn't mean in any way to blame him for what happened, but it does point out this lesson that we are supposed to take precautions when there is a threat, when there is the possibility of something negative happening, to protect against that actually happening. So that's a practical rule that comes from this episode with Gedalia. And again, it serves the purpose of keeping us in the mood of introspection and teshuvah and repentance, appropriate to these days. And also, it reminds us of the fragility of our connection to the land of Israel and how it was further placed asunder, ripped asunder with the assassination of Gedalia. Thank God now we are brought back together in a much closer way. So it's a bit of a difficult day, but my friends, I wish you an easy fast, and I hope that it is a positive and hopeful and good day for you. And I look forward to seeing all of you soon in person. Today's news pushes that a little bit further down the road. Nonetheless, I look forward to seeing all of you soon in person.